Today, we're diving into a really powerful idea that's turning our own backyards, balconies, and even those forgotten city spaces into a lifeline for the planet. It's called the Pollinator Pathway, and it might just change the way you look at your garden forever.
So let me ask you a question. Think about apples, avocados, maybe even your morning coffee. What do they all have in common? Well, the answer is pretty incredible. They exist because an animal, a bee, a butterfly, a bird, did its job. They moved pollen from one flower to another. It's this tiny act that literally underpins a huge chunk of our entire food supply.
But, there's a huge problem, a really big one. Those very same creatures that our ecosystems and food systems rely on, they're in serious, serious trouble. To really get why, you kind of have to rewind the clock. A few hundred years ago, the landscape was this rich, interconnected web of native habitats. But fast forward to today, and wow, between our cities, suburbs, and farms, a staggering 95% of that original ecosystem has been broken up, basically chopped into these tiny, isolated islands of green. And the result of all that fragmentation? It's breathtaking. In just the last 10 years, we've seen a 40% drop in global insect populations. That's huge. And bees and butterflies, they're some of the hardest hit. This isn't some slow, gradual thing. It's a full-on collapse happening right under our noses.
So what's the main culprit here? You might immediately think of pesticides, and yeah, they're definitely part of the story. But when you look at the data, a much bigger picture emerges. A massive 80% of the problem is driven by that land use change we just talked about, the loss and the fragmentation of their habitat. And that right there, brings us to the most crucial point. This idea kind of flips the whole script. Because if we created the problem by how we use our land, well, that means we also hold the power to fix it. And we can do it right where we live.
So how in the world do we do that? Well, this is where a really simple but brilliant idea has started a global movement. It's called the Pollinator Pathway.
The concept is so beautifully simple. A pollinator pathway connects all those isolated green spaces by creating a whole series of pollinator-friendly gardens across our communities. Think of it like a connect-the-dots picture for nature, creating a safe route for pollinators to travel, to find food, and honestly, to just survive. And let's be clear, we're not talking about creating one giant continuous park that stretches for miles. Nope. It's all about a network of individual actions. Your yard, a community garden, a few planters on Main Street, all acting like stepping stones. Each one becomes a vital little oasis for, say, a monarch butterfly on its long migration, or a native bee that can only fly a few hundred feet.
Okay, so this is where you come in, because seriously, anyone, anywhere can help build this pathway. Let's break down the 4 key steps to turning your own space into a crucial piece of this corridor.
It all boils down to 4 key shifts in how we think about our own spaces: what we choose to plant, how we see our yard, how tidy we feel we need to be, and what chemicals we use. Let's start with the most powerful one: what you plant. So check this out. Let's call it a tale of 2 dogwoods. Both are beautiful trees you could find at any nursery. On the left, you've got the Kusa dogwood, which is from Asia. On the right, the native flowering dogwood. Now, to our eyes, they might look pretty similar, right? But to the local ecosystem, they are worlds apart. And here's what that difference actually looks like. The non-native Kusa dogwood, it supports 0. That's right, a big fat 0 native insect species. Our native flowering dogwood, on the other hand, supports 117 different species of moths and butterflies. And then you look at something like a native oak tree, it's a whole city, supporting over 500 species of caterpillars. That is the incredible power of planting native. And please, don't think you need a huge yard to make a difference. Even a single pot of native plants on an apartment balcony can be that life-saving rest stop a monarch butterfly desperately needs to complete its unbelievable journey. Every little bit counts. The other steps are just as crucial. It's about becoming a messy gardener, and that's a good thing. It means leaving stems and leaves over the winter. That's critical shelter for nesting bees and hibernating butterflies. It means rethinking your lawn. 40 million acres of turf in the US are basically a food desert for pollinators. And finally, just avoid pesticides. They create what are called ecological traps, luring pollinators to beautiful flowers that are actually poisoned. And the best part is, when you take these steps, you're not just gardening by yourself. You are plugging into a rapidly growing global movement. You are not alone in this.
As the entomologist Doug Tallamy says, it's now within the power of the gardener to do something we all dream of doing, to make a real, tangible difference. This completely reframes gardening from just a hobby into a profound act of healing the planet. And this is happening everywhere. I mean, in Seattle, where the whole idea started. In Oslo, they've built a bee highway across city rooftops. In Bristol, in the UK, they're turning boring alleys into bee buffets. And in South Africa, they're building a corridor for sunbirds. This idea is taking hold all over the world.
So, by choosing to plant even a small native garden, you are literally linking your own patch of earth into this worldwide effort. You're helping to stitch our fragmented world back together, one yard, one flower pot, and one pollinator at a time.
So, I'll leave you with this final thought. Just look outside your window. Look at your yard or your balcony, your neighborhood park, even that little median strip on your street. What could your piece of the pathway look like?